The Miami Dolphins season came to a frustrating conclusion, one that left fans with a mix of disappointment and exhaustion. An 8-9 record, narrowly missing the playoffs, again, by a single spot. It's the kind of finish that feels all too familiar, a reminder of how close they came without ever truly being there. Now, the offseason begins, and all eyes are on the decisions that could define what's next for this team. Head coach Mike McDaniel and general manager Chris Grier are staying put. Owner Steve Ross confirmed it, setting off waves of reactions from fans and analysts alike. Some see stability in the decision, a chance for continuity that could pay off down the line. Others are left wondering why change wasn't prioritized after yet another year of falling short. The arguments aren't hard to see on either side. McDaniel showed flashes of brilliance in his first season as a head coach, but also made enough mistakes to raise questions. His creative play calling, while exciting, at times felt like it tried to do too much. Overthinking plays, penalties at the worst times, or failing to adapt in critical moments stood out as recurring issues. And when the games were tight, when it was all on the line, there were times he seemed to lose the plot, abandoning strategies that had worked earlier in favor of ideas that didn't. Chris Grier isn't immune from criticism either. His tenure as general manager stretches back to 2016, with 2 decades of experience in the Dolphins organization. Yet his legacy is one of missed opportunities, especially with the offensive line. It's been a constant thorn in the team's side for years, and Grier's inability to fix it has been glaring. Draft picks haven't developed, free agent signings haven't worked out, and short-term patches have only made things worse. At the end-of-season press conference, he once again acknowledged the issue, vowing to address it. But how many times can fans hear the same promise and still believe it? The frustration comes from knowing the talent is there, at least in some areas. But talent without direction, without cohesion, doesn't win games. The Dolphins need to figure out how to turn potential into consistent production. This offseason isn't just about filling holes, it's about proving that the front office and coaching staff can deliver on their words. The stakes are high, and the pressure is real. The roster itself needs a hard evaluation. There are players who simply don't fit anymore, whether due to underperformance, injuries, or failing to live up to expectations. Trimming the fat is the first step, but identifying where the team needs to improve is equally crucial. The offensive line has to be the top priority. It's been the Achilles heel of this team for far too long, a glaring weakness that opponents exploit with ease. Quarterbacks can't thrive without protection. Running backs can't establish momentum without lanes to run through. It's a fundamental part of football, and the Dolphins have neglected it for years. Fixing it is no longer optional, it's mandatory. Defensively, there's a need for depth. Injuries exposed just how thin this team is in critical areas, particularly in the secondary. Cornerbacks struggled, safety play lacked consistency, and the defensive line couldn't maintain its level when backups were called upon. Adding more dynamic, versatile players on defense isn't just about covering weaknesses, it's about elevating the unit as a whole. Offensively, there's work to do beyond the line. The Dolphins have standout playmakers, but the depth behind them is shaky. Wide receiver injuries throughout the season showed just how fragile the group can be. Adding another reliable target could make all the difference, especially when games are on the line. But none of it will matter if the coaching doesn't improve alongside the roster. McDaniel's creativity is his biggest asset and, at times, his biggest flaw. Knowing when to simplify the game plan, when to trust his players rather than overcomplicate things, will be critical moving forward. The Dolphins were one of the most penalized teams in the league, a glaring sign of poor discipline. Cleaning that up has to be a top priority, as does improving game management. Late-game decision-making, clock management, and knowing when to challenge plays are all areas where McDaniel has room to grow. His willingness to admit mistakes is a good sign, but now it's time to turn those admissions into results. This offseason is a moment of truth for Grier and McDaniel. The fan base is tired of promises that don't lead anywhere. It's not enough to talk about improving the offensive line or making the defense more reliable, it's about execution. Every move, every decision, will be scrutinized. The pressure is immense, and the stakes are clear: deliver or risk losing the trust of a fan base that has already waited too long for a team that can compete at the highest level. The Dolphins' talent is undeniable. There's a core here that can win. But time and again, they've fallen short. Whether it's coaching, roster construction, or a lack of discipline, something always seems to hold them back. This offseason is an opportunity to change that narrative, to build a team that isn't just good on paper, but one that shows up when it matters most. The path forward is full of questions. Can Grier finally address the offensive line? Can McDaniel refine his approach and lead with clarity and confidence? Can this team take the leap from almost to undeniable?